Okay, Fleet, Hampshire, North London, Brentford, York, Brighton, Sussex. I think Cardiff is winning for the furthest away. Not Cardiff, Canada. That's further away than Cardiff, isn't it? Kent. Lots of Kent parents sending thoughts and prayers for those parents who are under Kent County Council.
Oh, Kirsty's got COVID.
Who's got COVID?
Kirsty from Crowborough. I know Crowborough. I have friends there, and she's not very well. So I hope you're
thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can make that feel a little bit less grim for the next hour or so.
Or at the very least, not make it worse.
Always a bonus. Okay. My gosh, good turnout. Thanks for everyone joining us tonight. So we'll just do some quick introductions and then we'll tell you what's going to happen this evening and then we'll crack on. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Heidi Mather. As I mentioned, I live in West Yorkshire in Wakefield with my son Theo, who is 19. We are a neurodivergent household. I'm autistic ADHD, as is Theo. I work as an advocate and I also work supporting families who are neurodivergent with particularly issues around education. I wrote a book last year. You might have heard me talk about it if you know me and you follow me on the socials. Wait for Sharon to put in the chat. Oh, you wrote a book, you never mentioned it. I can see she's typing right now. It's a Sunday Times bestseller. And this is my friend Kate. Do you want me to do your introduction or do you want you to do it? Okay,
that'd be amazing.
Kate is I love it when you give me permission because I'm always tempted to do it like a beauty queen. Kate's measurements are 44. Kate is a neurodivergent psychotherapist. She's a parent to 3 neurodivergent kids. She is based in Manchester. She's also the chief comms officer at Neuroclastic, which is the biggest not-for-profit autistic-led organisation on the planet, people. And Kate and I do quite a lot of work together, and we love working together. Well, that's what I tell her, and she's never yet disagreed. So we're really excited to have you with us tonight. We're going to take you through a workshop that we've delivered before, but we've tweaked it a little bit. We like to change things up every time we do it, because different things come up at different times. And if we didn't do that, then our ADHD brains would get super bored. So I'm going to do a screen share. You will get a replay of this after tonight, so don't worry too much. Unless you're someone who processes by taking notes, you don't need to take notes, but you can if you wish. Screen share.
Nice stim, if nothing else.
What's that? Sorry.
It's nice stim, and so that which leads me to a permission, which is like you can move your body. You don't have to sit and have your cameras on. You can have your cameras off if you want to. You can move, you can draw, you can just do it.
We're all about the fidgeting here. Fidget till your heart's content.
Yeah, engage.
Fiddle away.
Engage.
Crochet and knitting particularly is encouraged. And if you want to hold it up now and then show us how far you've got at the end, that's always thrilling. So, as I mentioned, my name's Heidi, this is Kate. Kate and I do a lot of work supporting families in neurodivergent homes, and in the time that we've been working together, there are things that have come up time and time again. So tonight we're going to take you through a workshop, and then with your permission, I'm going to share with you something that we have to offer that is a paid for offer, which is a course that you can join us for in the autumn. We won't be offended if you don't want to stay for that bit, but to keep you here, I'm going to give away some free stuff at the end, because I know how this works. And apparently if you tell people they might get free stuff, they'll stay. So there you go. I'm being very open with you. I am selling, but I'm doing it in integrity and in honesty. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to sell to you. And that way I don't feel weird about it. And Kate still feels marginally okay about being in the room while I do it. Okay. So,
I'm just keeping an eye on their waiting rooms.
Yeah. So if you want to, it would be awesome, because I'm a massive egotist and also I'm all about the algorithm. If you want to take a screenshot or tag me on social media, then I will do a prize at the end of the session for anyone that tags me. I don't know why that says ag in the middle. I obviously started typing tag forgot I had typed tag me again and then didn't remove the ag. So there we go.
I just had some sort of existential crisis midway through a slide.
So you'll find me on Instagram, Heidi Maver. You'll find me on Facebook, Heidi Maver. It's spelled Mavir. I'm also on TikTok. Go ahead and take a picture, tag me, tell the world that you're with me. Not with me, but in my company or in mine and Kate's company. Don't tag Kate. She pretends she doesn't exist online. The only reason people know that she's real is because she turns up from time to time in closed Zooms. But she's kind of a bit ethereal and all that. She's not on the run from the law, I have checked. But yeah, go ahead and tag me. And at the end of the session, I will tell you that Lindsay, who I do a lot of work with, who is an incredible social media expert, Lindsay has told me that she'll go through tomorrow and she'll see everyone that's tagged me and she'll do a draw for someone to get a 30-minute Instagram one-to-one with her. Even if you only use your Instagram for friends, family, all that kind of stuff, Lindsay is just awesome at all things Insta. You can pick a brain, and especially if you're a business owner and you want to work on some branding stuff, what she can tell you in half an hour is worth its weight in gold. If you're not on social media and this makes no sense to you and you're not in the least bit interested, just keep listening. We're going to move off this screen right now. Okay. So tonight we're going to take you through our top tips for what you need to know and why you need to know it in terms of living in a neurodivergent household. See, someone loves a freebie and they're on an iPhone, so they're almost certainly on Instagram. That's everyone on iPhones is on Instagram. Kate and I have been working together for, oh God, how long? 2.5 years, maybe? That wasn't a rhetorical question, Kate. You're muted.
Sorry, I was typing and I didn't want to get on your nerves. Yeah, since lockdown. We met in lockdown and we started working then.
We did meet in lockdown, yeah.
Time got really wobbly, so I have no idea when that was.
Time isn't real also. Someone's saying they have a lift trap door under their 70 sitting room floor that you can hide out in, Kate, a bit like a priest hole. There's an offer you don't get every day.
No, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we're going to take you through our 5 things that we have together discovered, talked about, researched, we train on quite regularly, we write programs on, we support parents and carers with learning about this. They're the 5 things that as neurodivergent parents who have been through the ringer a bit, and as a professional psychotherapist and someone who just likes to talk about stuff on the internet, we're sharing with you our top 5 pieces of wisdom. So, number 1 is the amygdala. So go on, Kate, you can do this bit. This is the sciencey bit.
Okay, so the amygdala is like the fire alarm of your brain. It lives right in the center, and its job is to keep you alive by sounding the alarm if it picks up any kind of information that alerts it to some threat. So what happens is, if you use your hand as a brain, you've got your brain stem here and the amygdala is right in the middle and the frontal lobe is right over the top. That's where you do all your higher thinking, hard maths. So when the information about your environment and what's happening travels up your brainstem and gets a signal to your amygdala, there's some threat, and the amygdala sounds the alarm. What happens then is your frontal lobe is offline. We don't need that. We don't need hard maths right now. We just need to save your life, and the fire alarm is going. So that's when your body will dump cortisol and adrenaline into your body so that you could run away from the risk if you possibly could, or you could fight off the risk. It would also be where your response to fawn comes from, because if you can reduce the risk to yourself by kind of appeasing the threat, calming someone down who your body is perceiving as a threat to you, then you would do that. And the amygdala will also let you know, and all of these decisions about what the smartest thing to do in the situation happen unconsciously and in a fraction of a second. They're not conscious decisions at all. And that's where shutdown comes from too. If fighting, running away, fawning are not possible and they wouldn't keep you alive, the very next thing that will happen is that you will shut down. Everyone's usually heard of that phrase, play possum. Like a possum, when there's a predator, which is really, really, really still, because it knows that the predator doesn't want prey that isn't fresh. So the smartest thing for it to do is to shut down. So in that moment, your body is releasing all the chemicals into your system hormones into your system that would keep you alive. But the thing about the amygdala is, as a fire alarm, it can be quite a sensitive one, and the more experiences you have of having your little internal fire alarm set off, the more sensitive it can get. Is it doesn't know if the toast is burning or the house is on fire. It just knows there's smoke. So part of what we can do to understand ourselves better is to get to know how to notice that our kind of internal fire alarm is going off and we perceived a risk, and to be able to regulate ourselves. So, and often that means waiting. The best way to support somebody who's higher functioning, higher thinking is offline, is to wait, reduce demands, reduce noxious stimuli. So, for example, not talking really loudly. It might be that there's some sensory things that they really do like in that situation, and it might be that it's proprioception or a weighted blanket on their lap, or the cat or the dog on their lap. So you reduce the stimulation that is not good, and you increase the one that is wanted, and wait for the bit of the brain that can do the thinking and the clever stuff to come back online. So one of the things that goes wrong is that when we're in a sense of, like, when we're heightened and our threat system has been activated, somebody might come along and ask us lots and lots of questions, and the bit of our brain that is responsible for being able to answer those questions and analyze information and do complex thinking is just not online, because our fire alarm has gone off, and the only thing our whole system is meant to do in that moment is save our own life. So when we're supporting each other, and we notice that our threat system, we're in our polyvagal responses, the thing to do is to be gentle and wait and just support to regulate and co-regulate.
And in terms of when we're thinking about neurodivergent homes, why this is so important is that you need to understand that the amygdalas in your home will be responding to stimulus in different ways. And the amygdalas in your neurodivergent brains may be more sensitive based on their previous experience, but also their neurotype. So, for example, those of us who are ADHD will have often will have a particularly strong fight response. So our kind of well-trodden path will be anger or aggression, or frustration or RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, in response to feeling threatened. And knowing those things about the different neurotypes in your home, for example, if you have an ADHD in your home, someone who's autistic in your home, perhaps you have neurodivergent parents who are perhaps unrecognized or undiagnosed, and they've been living without being supported for a long time, then those amygdalas will all have different responses. And it's understanding that dynamic and knowing that for yourself is really, really vital. So knowing what your triggers are, knowing what your children or your young people's triggers are, and being able to work through that will really support you as you're trying to work out what works for you as a family.
And from a regulated place, from a place of like where you can engage with people and where there's no threat, having a conversation about what helps and doesn't, importantly, what doesn't help when your fire alarm is going off. So I know people who really love deep pressure in that moment, that's really grounding for them. And I know others who would just be totally triggered and would just not be able to tolerate and would find it really distressing to be touched. So in that moment of distress is not the moment to have those conversations, because we can't answer them, can't communicate. What we need is the reduction of stresses. But outside of that, later down the line, a kind of debrief and, gosh, that was really tough, isn't it? Is there anything that I did that made it worse? Or is there anything that I could have done that you think might have helped? And it might be, I wanted you with me, but I didn't want you to touch me. Or I couldn't cope with you being with me, but I needed you near. So like I could wait outside, I can clear that room and make sure you're safe. And then I can wait for you outside and come and check on you in a few minutes.
Yeah. And Kim says, this explains why my daughter cannot stand the strong perfume and even the hairdryer when she's in shutdown. Her senses are heightened to extreme levels.
Yes. Kim, that's exactly it. And I always use the example of motion sickness because it's like a common experience that lots of people can relate to. If you've ever been on any kind of transport and felt really sick, that's your vestibular system that's dysregulated. If someone wanted to put the music on really loud or offer you a snack, some other kind of sensory input, most often the answer is, oh no, I can't sort of engage with any of my other sensory systems because there is one of them that is really dysregulated and out of whack, and I need that one. I need support to regulate that so that everything else can open up again.
Yeah. Amy's asking, is misophonia connected to this? So misophonia is, yeah. Can you explain misophonia quickly, Kate?
Oh, so misophonia is when, well, usually people associate it more with sound. So when it can be a particular sound sets off your threat system. So when you hear a particular noise, your instant reaction is anger and rage, usually.
Common one is people eating. Yeah.
But actually, I've done a lot of reading around misophonia to support clients, and quite often one of the things that can happen is that the most familiar sounds become triggering when people have it really acutely. So sometimes it can be the voice of someone they really, really love and really want near them, but somehow it's become a trigger for that.
Yeah.
My boy's father's breathing. So setting boundaries is really important. Once you know that about yourself, you absolutely have the right to set some caring boundaries. Like, I know that the sound of that person's breathing is going to trigger me especially when I'm already a bit stressed and my baseline is different. I'm going to say that I'm just going to sit a little bit further away just for now because that's what I need.
And it's preferable to finding a way to stop the breathing, which is not generally considered socially acceptable.
Husband snoring count? Yes. Can you get away with murder? Well, it depends how good you were at it, I guess. I don't
know. Okay, so that's number one, the amygdala. Number two is brain train and trusting your gut. So Kate and I talk a lot about this, but actually what we mean when we say the brain train is this idea that thoughts very quickly spiral and run away from us. And again, if you're an ADHD, this is a very common experience. Those of us who just do not have quiet brains can find it difficult to connect to that innate sense of what the right thing to do is, and or we have become accustomed to ignoring our red flags, or more accurately, to not trusting our green flags. So our brains are so busy and we're so much on the treadmill of kind of thinking ahead, and our brains are working at 1,000,000 miles an hour, that sometimes we miss opportunities to consider what might be going on. And that can be things like we miss opportunities to consider what might be going on with the amygdalas in our home. And we do what we call jumping on the brain train, where I don't know if you've ever had the experience of getting on a train. I've had this experience being on a platform, knowing the next train into the platform is not my train, but the doors of the train open, and because everyone else gets on the train, I panic and I get on the train too, and then the doors close and it sets off and I'm on the wrong train because I just got swept up in the moment and just wasn't able to stay rooted and to trust that I did know what train I was getting and it wasn't this train. So one of those things that can be very common for us if we're neurodivergent people, or if we're people who live in very busy homes, is that we don't know, or we haven't practiced what trusting our gut feels like. And even sometimes we've never had the experience of that. So there's real value in finding what works for you in terms of beginning to give yourself time and space to really tap into that more regulated state when you're able to think and feel more clearly in response to stimulus, rather than jumping on the brain train and riding it all the way to the end. Sharon says they did that in Leeds, was meant to be going to London and they ended up in some strange place in Leeds, had to go all the way back to Leeds and was late getting to London. Yeah, more than once.
So I think one of the things that happens as neurodivergent people is that because our experience of the world is a divergent one, it diverges from the experience of the neuromajority. So we might experience something as quite stressful because with our sensory profiles, it is for us. But when we grew up, most of the people around us were saying, nah, it's not that, or that's not difficult. We can learn to override or not trust our sense of what's real. So that's where we can kind of get really out of sync with our gut and trusting our sense of what's good for us. And equally, we often aren't given a lot of transition time and time to regulate so that we can tune in with what our regulated self would want to do. And we are encouraged to make decisions and act quickly on the timeframes of those around us, when we might need a little bit more time for a transition and to decide what happens next. And so we're having to make decisions from a quite dysregulated place. And that's when I think about the brain drain, I think about like being taken with the dysregulation and then trying to kind of haul back from it, and it being exhausting and traumatic, rather than saying it's okay, the train is coming, I don't have to get on. I mean, it's a place of privilege, but like I'm going to go and sit in the waiting room, and I'm going to regulate, and I'm going to find a way to soothe myself because I deserve that, and that's okay. And very few trains are mandatory to get on right now.
Your story. Okay. The next thing that is really vital and that we hear from a lot of our parents is around understanding boundaries. Now, we talk about boundaries a lot in conversations where we're having these deep and meaningfuls. We often speak about boundaries, but often what people mean when they're talking about boundaries is like saying no to people, or not being a yes person, or not letting people walk all over you. And actually, one of the main things that we train in when Kate and I work together, and that we speak to parents a lot about, is that boundaries start with understanding your sensory boundaries. So just like we were saying about with the misophonia, understanding that, your partner's breathing makes you want to claw their face off, is useful to know, because you can then make a decision that your sensory boundary is that you will not let them breathe in your face if you can prevent it, and you will move yourself away from it rather than have them be responsible for not breathing any longer. But there are other ways, right, of like, go on Kate, sorry if you don't mind, there are other ways of understanding our own sensory boundaries and what that looks like and what that feels like in a busy neurodivergent home.
I think the first thing most commonly is for people not to really understand what their boundaries are in terms of sensory, just because we tend not to notice that we have a sensory profile until we're like wanting to rip someone's face off and can't quite work out why, but something got us really angry all of a sudden. So getting curious about when I just felt really angry, or like I just had to leave, like in an instant, there will have been something will have happened, something was too much. What was happening in that environment? What had been happening just before that? What did my day look like? What got me to that? Because everyone makes sense in their context. People make sense, behavior makes sense. And everyone has a sensory profile. Autistic people get to talk about our sensory profiles because we tend to be hypo or hypersensitive to certain things. And because our responses to those hypo or hypersensitivity can be quite profound or loud, people know to make mention of that. But neurotypical folks have sensory profiles too, and are dysregulated by noxious stimuli. We all deserve to get to know ourselves so that we can honor our needs.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's tricky with children, younger children especially, is that they're not able to articulate, and they don't necessarily understand how their sensory system is working. They're experiencing it purely on an experiential level. It's not a logical thing for them. And sometimes you'll have children or young people and they will be quite clearly dysregulated by something, and you've got to be a bit of a sensory detective to work out what it is that's going on for them. And it can be something as simple as, it's very common for many of our autistic kids to need labels taking out of the back of their clothes, for example. My son has holes in the back of most of his t-shirts from when he's put a t-shirt on, decided he doesn't like the label, and just ripped it out. And so there's 2 holes in the back of most t-shirts. But Kirsty is saying her 7-year-old ADHD PDA is just starting to understand and be able to communicate his own sensory boundaries, and it has been game changing. So yeah, absolutely. If we can help our children and young people to understand what that means for them as a sensory being, but also as a sensory being that perhaps has a different sensory experience to other people in the home, the quicker we can model that to them and the better we can give them the vocabulary to be able to communicate that to other people in the house, the more chance you've got of being able to thrive in that home, and for them to be able to become a good self-advocate and be able to say things like, I cannot sit with you while you eat that thing, or what have you.
I think one of the really important things that we can do to support our young people with this is to do something what I call like showing your workings out. You know, a bit like, you know, in maths when you could get points even if you didn't get the question right because you showed how you got to that wrong answer. With sensory, for me and the kids in my life, it's kind of saying out loud how I'm working things out, which is, oh, I feel like I'm finding it hard to concentrate. I think I might be hot. I'm going to take my jumper off, because my eldest, for example, wouldn't ever associate taking their jumper off with cooling down. That wasn't a link that they naturally could make. They needed explaining that this leads to this, and I'm going to do it. And talking about using that declarative language of like, I'm feeling this, so I'm going to do this, is like a permission for someone else to do the same thing. It's like a teachable moment, but you're not using the demand of, are you hot? Would you like to take your jumper off? And take like lots of questions like, oh God, I don't know if I'm hot. Interoception, I don't know what's going on in my body. Would I like to take my jumper off? I don't know. What's going to happen next? Where will I put my jumper? All of those things. I'm hot. I'm going to take my jumper off.
Yeah. Yeah. In our house, we ask for human blankets on the regular, and where you basically lie down and another person lies on top of you like a blanket. Now that you can get weighted blankets, you don't need that as much, but you still cannot beat a human blanket. It's the best feeling ever. Helen says, I remember doing some training where we were asked to check our sensory systems before we started. There were sweets, fidget toys, Play-Doh, drawing on the table. It was the first time ever that I'd been given permission to ask for a strobe light off and to move my chair at 40 something. Prep for best is now a thing I advocate. Yeah. Yeah. Understanding that when you go into, for example, a meeting in a school, there's every chance that you're going to be more heightened and your senses are going to be hyper vigilant because you're already stressed. So it might be that something in an ordinary circumstance would not give you that extra level of anxiety and vigilance and stress hormones, but because you're in a stressful situation already, you know, the smell of something or the lighting may really have an impact on you. So being able to advocate for yourself when you're able in those moments is really, really helpful.
Abby just said, oh my God, I just realized my youngest child loves a pylon and says, crush me. I'm very new to all this. So your youngest is seeking proprioceptive input, so deep pressure.
Feel free to give them a human blanket with my blessing.
Yeah, but proprioceptive input is a dampness, and when we're quite heightened, proprioception can bring down that kind of energy level. So to de-escalate a high energy level. It's important though you don't do that without someone's consent. You don't assume that that's what they need, because touching people without their consent is not cool. Equally, when you want to upward regulate your energy, vestibular input is the one to go. So vestibular is your ear, your balance, your movement. Also worth saying that regulated doesn't mean calm. Regulated means the right energy for the task in front of you that you want to engage in. So if you want to go on a roller coaster, being super calm and like spaced out is not regulated energy.
The roller coaster one is really interesting. If you go for a family day out at a fun fair or a what they call theme park, I remember going to theme parks when I was a kid, and it was kind of like this thing of everyone went on everything. And now when we go to theme parks as a family, we know that some of us like a swinging thing, some of us like a spinning thing. One of us likes the dodgems, one of us likes the waltzers, but the rest of us hate them. And like, it's a really kind of like clear picture of how different people's sensory systems feel stimulated and regulated and relaxed and overstimulated. Yeah. Someone in the chat just said something that I thought was really interesting. Where's it gone? The only thing my 15-year-old tolerates touch-wise is me giving her feet a squeeze. helps get her off to sleep. That's a really common technique suggested by OTs, actually. Squeezing feet, squeezing legs, squeezing wrists, squeezing arms, obviously with consent and with the right amount of pressure that's comfortable for them. Sharon, have you got any, I know your name is not Sharon, I'm reading something from Sharon. Have you got anything that you could offer? Neither of us are occupational therapists, by the way, but let's just see. What alternatives can I offer my child who likes the feeling of hitting someone? They're 14 and just said they like this sensation.
Oh yeah, martial arts. They like the proprioceptive input, so the pressure on the muscles in the hand. So making bread, anything with dough where you have to knead and put loads of pressure into it. Rolling around. So if it's particularly in the hands, I would go for kind of crash mats or punch bags, and in the kitchen I would do dough, like make it really tough dough that you can throw around and really get that proprioceptive input in. That's
and sometimes it's the feeling of the pressure in our joints, isn't it? It's the resistance in our joints. So other things that give you that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be punching or hitting. It could be things that just give you that pressure in your joints. So things like squats, things like pushing off against a wall, hanging from things by your arms, just to be clear. Those things can give you some of that same pressure in your joints.
Yeah. And just being super interested. So like, oh gosh, it's really interesting that you like that sensation. Let's see if we can find things. Just and make that a mission to get excited about. That's a sensation you like. Where can we find that in a way that like doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt other people?
Also useful to acknowledge that sometimes we all want to punch someone in the face. It doesn't mean that we have to do it, but it's a thing. It's a definite thing.
There's a different reason between I feel angry at you and I just really like that sensation in my hands.
Yeah. Stretch bands tied to the back of the chair and punch arms forward, says Samantha. Okay. Number 4, things you need to know for thriving in a neurodivergent household. Lisa says they imagine punching many people. Triggers and regulation. We've touched on this a little bit, but it says triggers. I remember this now. I forgot the last time I made these slides. I said to myself, I need to change that, and I haven't. And so it still says triggers. You're welcome.
Some people like to bounce because it's regulating and vestibular input. And so it's really important that we account for them in this.
Yeah.
It
also should say triggers.
Yeah.
When we're talking about triggers, that language of, oh, I'm triggered, it's so triggering. The really important thing to acknowledge is that although that is the language of, there's some people who like use that as an insult. On a serious note, it is very useful to know what your buttons are. And particularly if they're sensory buttons, but also things that, if you know that you're particularly sensitive to a particular type of criticism, or if you know that, for example, if you are hungry, you're especially dysregulated, or if you're, certain situations or people or experiences will be very dysregulating for you. And then you can make decisions about whether you choose to engage with those triggers, or whether you try to find a way to avoid them, or whether you try to find a way to ride through them and make it tolerable for yourself. Because sometimes there will be environments and places when there are triggers that you cannot avoid, but you can, in the knowledge of knowing what those things are, prepare yourself for them, mitigate the other risks, and also model that for your children and young people. And the other thing to know about triggers is that there is an opposite of a trigger, and the opposite of a trigger is a glimmer. So it's useful for you to, I find it useful to be thinking and to be talking with my child. I've only got one. I've got kind of one that is not really mine, but kind of is mine, but they're not really mine. That's by the by, sorry. ADHD tangent. But it's useful to speak with our children and young people about, as much as it's useful to acknowledge our triggers, and we absolutely must, and we must validate that experience, it's also useful to acknowledge our glimmers, which are our moments when we feel connected, in community, regulated to whatever level we need to be, comfortable, safe. And it can be really helpful to encourage our children and young people to do as much of recognizing what the glimmers are as recognizing what the triggers are, because when you're trying to think about what your sensory boundaries are, for example, knowing what does work for you is just as important as knowing what doesn't work for you.
And when we were talking about like supporting yourself with triggers, like it might be that there are some things that are just so painful that you'd like to avoid them if possible. And if you can, and you know, great. But the world sort of has a way of serving up things that activate us, things that provoke us to feel a particular way. And not everything is avoidable. And actually, it serves us well to find strategies to be able to soothe and to manage when things are activating. So it might be that once you know that a particular thing is hard for you and that might provoke really strong feelings, you can then say, like, what would support me in that? If I have to go to this thing, what might I need to help me get through that in a way where I don't abandon myself, or I don't behave in a way that I feel like might sabotage me in some way, or I might regret afterwards. So it might be that you take a safe person with you. It might be that you take something that grounds you with you. Like quite often I've got something like this in my pocket, and I'm like, I like to hold on to, like a touchstone.
I've got my spoon rest.
Oh yeah, your stolen spoon rest. Thank you, little Yang Thing. It might be that you create a filter in your emails so that emails from the local authority are actually they're going to bypass your inbox and they're going into a particular folder. And you are going to decide when you open them and when you look for them, so that your nervous system isn't hijacked just because at 4:50 on a Friday, that's when people have decided they're going to send you the emails that's going to make your soul leave your body.
Mm-hmm.
There are, like, how can you create boundaries for yourself and supports for yourself that help you to feel more in control of your nervous system and more like your body is safe to be in.
Yeah. Kim's saying, is it usual for the triggers to change, and also how to regulate what works one week might not work the next week, what sets one week might be different the next, maybe because we're coming out of burnout. I think that is a really common experience. It is, people, I think we tend to have a sensory profile that means that we have hyper or hypo arousal in different parts of our sensory systems, but that can vary greatly from day to day. And as we mature, that can change as well, because literally our physical being is changing. So for me, and I say as I mature, I also mean as we get older, my auditory processing has really changed over the past 5 years. I've gone from not really having too many difficulties with auditory stuff to being really like triggered by lots of things. And I also now have tinnitus. So it's important to acknowledge that your sensory triggers and your ability to regulate will vary greatly from day to day, week to week, and particularly from month to month and year to year. Yeah. Talking about squeeze machines in the chat.
Yeah, temple grounded proprioception.
Yeah. What was I going to look at here?
Somebody said you can do that, and I think Victoria, you might be talking about what I said about creating rules in your emails too. Yeah, yes, you can. You can absolutely do that. If you use Gmail, you go into life.
Yeah, I know, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer.
If you want to know how, just Google the question. Like Google, how do I create a rule so that something gets a label? You can do it in Outlook too. Everything has a version of that.
Yeah. It's an excellent thing for Fridays. Just switch it on Fridays, and then you don't get any emails until Monday.
Reclaim your Friday afternoons, and you decide on your own terms when you're going to check, and you can decide whether you need somebody with you when you check so that they can co-regulate with you. We learn to regulate, which is to kind of reach a place of feeling safe and kind of okay in the world with another person first. As babies, we can't do that on our own. We do that because somebody holds us and soothes us. And I think as we get older, we get this sense of like, we should always be able to independently regulate. And it's a great skill to have, for sure. But independence can sometimes be quite the ableist myth. And I will go on about this at great length if given the chance. Interdependence is where it's at. It's okay to need the support of another to soothe. It's okay to want that and to seek out safe ways to soothe. And that doesn't have to be somebody who knows that that's what's doing. It can be somebody on a podcast that you tune into because the sound of their voice is really regulating for you. Or it can be a friend who absolutely knows that you're just going to borrow them for half an hour on a Saturday to just check that particular inbox for an email.
I think the other thing as well with that is understanding that oh my goodness me, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone.
Oh well.
It was really, really clever as well. Like,
Yeah,
it's probably the most wise thing I've ever said in my entire life.
Yeah.
And you're not going to benefit from it. No, it's gone.
No.
It'll come back.
Or it won't.
No, it will. I'll text you at 2 a.m. That thing. It was about independence.
Yeah.
It was very wise. I can't remember. We are social creatures. We are not meant to be alone. If we were left alone, we wouldn't survive. It was more than that. It was very wise. Fill in the gaps. Let's appreciate.
Okay, and as neurodivergence, people might know the term spiky profiles that speak to how, as neurodivergent people, we can have things that we're incredibly good at and things that we really struggle for. And in that way, we're kind of like little cogs. But the great thing about that is in community, we can lean into the spiky profiles of other people who have complementary functions. Like, what are you great at that I struggle for, but I'm great at this and you struggle for? Like, that's the value of neurodivergent community, is knowing how to lean in and for us to become, we're wired for specialism rather than generalism as autistic people, for sure. So how do we lean into each other and use our specialist brains?
That's where the connection is. Zoe says, I'm not neurodivergent, but due to trauma, I'm triggered by certain noises. Trauma brains are considered neurodivergent brains. Because it does change the way we process. Sometimes it changes the physical makeup of our brains if you've experienced trauma. And, and if you have, for example, and not everybody who has trauma has a diagnosis, but if you do have a diagnosis of PTSD, you're absolutely considered neurodivergent. You're one of ours.
And it's acquired neurodivergence.
Yeah.
So another example of that might be a stroke or a traumatic brain injury. Yeah.
Anything that affects your processing and or your sensory system is considered a neurodivergence. We have this conversation tonight in our community about whether there is actually ever such a thing as neurotypical. So one of the things about community that I discovered, and that I think this is the fifth pillar of the value of community, is that we have this myth, particularly as autistic people, or what people think about us as autistic people, that we're not social creatures, that we're socially impaired, and that we don't seek other people. Hello, are you all right? Okay, just a bit busy. Okay, thanks. Just let himself in, burped. Sorry, everyone. Thanks. Just literally walked in, burped, and went, I'm just going in the bath. Sorry. What was I saying? Told that we're not social creatures, that we're told that we're not, because we do socializing differently, because some of us prefer a 2-man tent rather than a rave, for example, because we tend to engage in connection through our intense interest in the same thing, because we often tend to connect with other people by the opposite of small talk. We like to do big talk. We roll into a room and it's a race to see who can talk about their trauma quickest, because we know that that's where the connection is. So but it's a fallacy that we don't need and want community, and it is a lifesaver for many people, and particularly for parents. And Kate and I are really committed to trying to facilitate community wherever we can, because we know what a difference it can make, especially if you're in a situation where, for many of you, I'm sure is the case, you're fighting for rights or advocating for your children or young people. Not having other people around you with shared experience can be really isolating. And someone said in the chat, didn't they, that loneliness is considered to be one of the biggest disabilities. It doesn't matter what your community looks like. Many of us have online communities that are our places, that are our safe and brave spaces. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. And certainly we were saying earlier on tonight, Kate and I, that lockdown was like the making of the autistic community in many ways, because we were allowed to communicate and be together in the way that felt most natural to us. It's why many of our children and young people stay up all night gaming. Go on, what were you saying? Sorry.
I was going to say that's not all autistic people. Some autistic people really suffered in lockdown.
Oh, yeah.
But sort of for folks who are well, like me, and I think like you to some extent, you're more extroverted than me, but a kind of performing extrovert. Yeah, but I reckon like a performing extrovert. I still think you kind of recharge your batteries in a quieter way.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, extroverted introvert.
Yeah, all of a sudden the accommodations that we had maybe been needing and asking for that weren't possible became possible overnight because everybody needed them.
Yeah.
And things like social events became accessible because they were happening online, so you didn't. Yeah, so
for about 13 hours we had the upper hand.
We're like, we've been training for
this. I can't go out.
Right.
Amazing. And then it didn't. Yeah. And I know that for many people we're making light of it. And Lisa, I'm sending love to you. I can see your comment. For many people, lockdown was an incredibly traumatic and stressful experience, and we don't want to make light of it. And I'm grateful that one of the things that came out of lockdown was that we do now, I think, have more respect for online community and for being in community with people who are not necessarily in the same room at the same time. Kate and I are very good friends, and I think we've been in the same room at the same time 3 or 4 times, maybe, Matt.
Yeah, a good handful.
Yeah.
But I think it's really worth validating that online friendships are real friendships. Your online connections are real as anyone else's. Offline. I don't call it real life anymore. I call it offline friendships because I think I used to have a value that there was some kind of hierarchy of
that IRL in real life. Yeah.
It's all real life.
Yeah. My real life happens on social media and in internet chat rooms, and not in internet chat rooms. That sounds really sordid. I've not been in an internet chat room for quite some time. Just to be clear, not judging anyone who spends time in internet chat rooms. I'm speaking out loud, aren't I?
Crashing on.
Yeah. So if this is ringing true for you, and if this is some stuff, this is where I'm going to start telling you about something that you might want. I'm going to do it with full disclosure. Stay till the end. I'll give you some free stuff. I promise it'll be worth it. You'll learn some things that'll be interesting. But I'm about to show you something you might want to buy. Strap in. So if you do, if some of this is resonating with you and you're thinking, okay, that's all great, 5 pillars of thriving in a neurodivergent household, you've just told us what they are, but you haven't really told us much about it. It's almost like you're trying to sell us something. Here comes.
Well done. You're right.
Yeah. So this is when I count the participant numbers. Okay. So Neurocurious is something that Kate and I did last year, and we're doing it again this year. We're starting on the 21st of September. It's an online community for people who want to learn more about some of the things that we've talked about this evening. I'll show you what it looks like. It's like I said, it's 12 weeks. So we start on the 21st of September. We go right through to just before Christmas. And over that 12 weeks, we do 30 hours of live training. It's not just 30 hours of us. You'll be delighted to know. Sometimes I don't speak. You'll be probably even more delighted to hear. We have guest experts who come in and speak to different topics. We have conversations, reflections about neurodivergence and neurodivergent culture. It's particularly for people who are either just discovering the neurodivergence in their home or want to learn more about either their own neurodivergence or their children or young people's neurodivergence. So it's intended to be a really intense deep dive into some of the key themes that you'll hear people talking about in communities and you'll be like, I don't know what that means. It's kind of intended to be a bit of a, let's get you around all of what that all means and help you kind of unpick some of that. It's also knowledge-based and tools-based. So we do some practical things. We have specialists that come in and train for us. We have occupational therapists and speech and language therapists. We also have people from the mental health background. We have people from social care. And we also have people, say again?
Activists.
We have activists. We have campaigners who come in and give you a really broad look at lots of different neurodivergent experiences and lived experience. And it's also something where we do that live every week. If you want to, you can join us live. We do it on a Thursday evening, but you do get a replay as well. So we have usually on the cohort, we have a kind of 50-50 split, or people who do come and join us live, and then people who watch on the replay. Abby's saying, would this be a good for me as someone on the pathway for ADHD assessment and 3 possibly neurodivergent children who I'm struggling to get assessed? Yes, you're our ideal client, would be the answer to that question.
Yeah, we want people to be like getting to know themselves for who they are, to understand that they are who they believe themselves to be and how they've experienced themselves to be. Like, diagnosis is a privilege that not everyone has access to, but that doesn't mean that you're any less neurodivergent.
Yeah. And it's what we try to do between us is to hold space for you to be as serious or as silly and anything in between that you need. And we try and give you a space to show up as and when you want to or not. The kind of the motto for Kate and I and everything we do together is, we're not the boss of you, or I'm not the boss of you, hashtag #intboy. Also hashtag titbomb. Time is what is it?
Time
isn't the boss of me. There we go. That's not as catchy. But you do what feels right to you, and we hold space for you to do that, and we give you replays to access whenever you need to if you're not able to engage on a weekly basis. So these are some of the topics that we cover. You can see we cover a deep dive in lots of these areas. What we do with our guest trainers is we use different guest trainers every time. We give them these topics and they tell us what they would like to deliver on. We make sure we cover all of this, but they write specifically for that neurocurious cohort. So we have content that you'll only access through neurocurious. You'll only hear that trainer deliver that piece of training if you're in a neurocurious cohort. What were you going to say, Kate?
Well, just to add that we give them these headings, but they are also training on their specific specialism. So, for example, neurodivergent communication would be an autistic or otherwise neurodivergent speech and language therapist who, I'm just thinking about last year, was talking about neurodivergent communication and the validity of it and what that means, rather than here's what communication is from a neurotypical perspective, and here's how you're different. It's like, no, here's what neurodivergent communication looks like. Here's why you're valid in all the ways that you are, and supporting to kind of advocate for your own communication rights and like normalizing rather than pathologizing.
Yeah. You can see in the chat we have got some of the previous neurocurious cohort with us because they show up for the opening of an envelope, frankly. I love you, really. But they're kind of sharing their stories about how helpful it was to them. Someone said, also ideal, I reckon, for those who are about 90 to 95% sure they are neurotypical parents with neurodivergent children. Yes. Be warned, you might come out the other end not being fully sure that you are neurotypical.
Somebody said, is fibromyalgia considered neurodivergent? No, but fibromyalgia is a really common co-occurring condition for lots of neurodivergent people, including me.
Someone's asking, how does it differ to Unstoppable Parent? So Unstoppable Parent is a 5-week program, and we've just finished that, so that won't run again now till next year. But Neurocurious is 12 weeks, and it's more intensive in terms of the amount of material. So I'll show you on the next slide. We do 12 weeks of live trainings, but then we also give you an extra bonus Zoom every 2 weeks. So that includes Q&As, it includes guest spots. We also do social Zooms in that as well. So you have the opportunity to dip into more content. We give you worksheets and handouts for each session, but then more kind of, go ahead, sorry.
They're not mandatory.
They're not mandatory.
People
Some people never read them, and that's absolutely fine. But you do have the option to kind of do a bit of pick and mix. So if, for example, with Unstoppable Parent, it's kind of, it's linked so that all 5 weeks follow on from each other, and you don't have to watch it in order, but it makes a little bit more sense if you do. With Neurocurious, it's much more kind of watch it in the order that you want, come to the live sessions you want to, the others you can leave or revisit afterwards. We do run an online community, an online Facebook group for Neurocurious that is just for Neurocurious cohorts, so it's similar in that respect. The other things that are similar is that you do get 3 months Marble Run membership. The Marble Run is my online subscription where you get access to all of my training and my resources and my templates. And you also get an EOTAS Matters webinar library pass. So you get access to all my historical webinars. So I think there's 17 at the moment in there. So it's a lot more stuff, I guess. Helen's saying it's a bit of a top up. The reason that Neurocurious exists for anyone who has done Unstoppable Parent, and it's not a requirement at all, it's intended for anyone who wants to come on. But if you have done Unstoppable Parent, the content in Neurocurious is what we couldn't get into Unstoppable Parent, because we sat down and planned it out and we just had so much stuff. And then when Unstoppable Parent finished the first time, people said to us, we want something else. So we wrote Neurocurious. And we are really proud of it, and we know that it makes a massive difference to people, and we love being in community with the Neurocurious cohort. Their friendships are forged in there that are just incredible. The community is where it's at, really. I need to do this as I miss our weekly Unstoppable Parent meetings. Content sounds very interesting. We've had a lot of people who have come through from Unstoppable Parent. Helen says Neurocurious was the gift to myself that keeps on giving. So the standard package is everything that's down that left-hand side. And then if you want something a little bit extra, we have, last time we ran it, we had people asking us for a bit of something extra. So we've put 2 extra levels in this time. So there is a silver package, which is everything you get in the standard package, but then you also get 12 weeks of WhatsApp support from me and Kate. So on a Tuesday, if you're in the silver cohort, you'll get a text message or a WhatsApp message, and it'll be, hey, we're in your pocket for the day, and you can message me and Kate and we'll cheerlead you. I don't know, we'll maybe do ASMR if you want. I don't know what we'll do, but we're your cheerleader in your pocket. You can also ask us questions about the cohort, the content of the cohort, the content of the training. You can ask us for specific things around things that we've dug into. You can ask me about EOTAS and EHCP and tribunal stuff, and that will be every week for the 12 weeks that we're together. That's the only way you can access that support. We don't do it anywhere else. And then we also
ask me about brains, and
you can ask Kate about brains, and you can ask her to tell you all about why independence is an ableist notion. She'll fill a full WhatsApp thread with that for you.
Talk to you about otters as well, so you know it's a range.
Yeah, we'll GIF you if you want to be GIFed. We'll happily GIF you. Like, we communicate a lot by GIF. Lucia, thank you. I was like, Lucilla. Send me a message on Facebook or through Instagram and we'll sort you out, my love. If you want a little bit something extra on top of that, we also have a gold package. There's only 5 spaces on gold, so it's everything in the standard and the silver, and then you also get 3 monthly coaching calls with me and or Kate. You can choose. You can have us together, you can have one or the other of us, you can have one with her, one with me, one of us together, whatever you want. So every month you get a coaching call with us to unpick some of the stuff that you're thinking about, or investigate a bit more what's coming up for you, or just, I don't know, have a chat. Although it's better not to use it just to have a chat, because you paid for it, so you want to get value out of it.
Yeah, we always say, like, if have a real reflect on what you'd like out of that, so you can get to work for you.
Yeah, and we'll send you a prompt sheet out in advance so that you can have a think about what might work for you. Okay, so this is the screen where I tell you how much. In gold, would you give me advice on EOTAS, on EHCP? Yes, I would. Yes. How do I sign up with you to get EOTAS support? I'm not sure if this can be done, and also how much. I don't do one-to-one EOTAS support, unfortunately. The only way you can access that currently is through Neurocurious. But we do have lots of resources on our website, and we have the marble run. So if you go to my website, HeidiMaber.com, click on For Families, you can see the different options that are available there. Okay. So the standard, it works out at the equivalent of about £30, just under £30 a month. The standard package is £475. That takes us from the 21st of September right through to just before Christmas. We'll probably have a Christmas party, I imagine. You can do it, pay in one go, or you can do it with installments. You can pay it over 3 months or over 6 months if you wish, just to whichever makes it most affordable for you. The silver package is £750 and the gold package is £999. So again, with the installment options. So I'm going to pop you a link in the chat if you want to go and have a look. Oh, I can't get this in the thingy. Hang on a second. Can you get on the thingy? Here we go.
I'm going to need a bit more detail on what the thingy is.
On the thingy,
right?
The thingy in this case is the internet.
Yeah, let me get on the thingy and put the link in the WhatsApp.
I've done it. I've put the whatchamacallit in the Ujima Sharon was going to post her affiliate link. Nice try, Sharon. Never underestimate the value of just having a chat. Our chat was invaluable to me. I know, I didn't mean that. You know what I mean. We have also got some affiliates. So if you want to go and have a chat with any of our affiliates, you'll see them talking on social media. They're people who have done Neurocurious before. If you want to pick their brains about how it's worked, they can give you an affiliate link. You can sign up through their link as well. And they get a little cheeky reward as a thank you. So if this sounds like something that would be of interest to you, go to our website. Let me see if I can get this back up online. View. The link is in the chat. We are now open. If you'll get an email straight after tonight, if you are signed up on my mailing list, and it'll say the cart is open. It is open. You can now book on. If you know you definitely want a spot, comment I'm in and I'll give you a little shout, and then we're going to give away some stuff because you all stayed until the end like good children, and I'm really proud of you for doing good listening and sitting on the story carpet, so well behaved. Congratulations, you can have something out of the bucket. So those of you that are still here, I'm going to just do a stop share. And I'm going to do some giveaways. I've got some goodie bags. In the goodie bags, there is a first edition of my book. I don't know if I mentioned
you wrote
a book. I know. So there's a first edition. You can't buy it anymore, but I have got a box of them in my garage. So you get one of them. You'll also get a goodie bag with some marbles, and I'll send you some Yorkshire tea because it's the best tea in the world, and some other bits and bats. So we've got 49 people on with us live. Let me do a random number generator.
Right.
The number
counting.
Picker 1 to 49. Okay, so we're going to do 3 of these. Number 20. Who's that, Kate?
8, 9. It is Kate O'Sullivan.
Kate O'Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, Kate. You've just won a goodie bag. Please, would you send me a message? Or I will send an email out as well. We'll find you. But if you are connecting me on social media, send me a message and I'll get your address off you. But we will find you as well. Let's do another one. Number 7. That's an easy one to count. Go on.
Abby. Anne O'Sullivan.
Anne O'Sullivan. Are the O'Sullivans cleaning up on the raffle?
Yeah.
Oh, don't you hate it when a family do that?
Yay!
I was just typing well done to the other O'Sullivan.
Are you related?
We're not.
Well, there you go. Anne, do send me a message or I will find you. That sounds really, really ominous, doesn't it? I will find you. So you've got a goodie bag. Let's do a third one. Number 42.
Where's Kate? She was 20. Okay.
Did you just count on from 20 instead of starting from the beginning again?
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I would have gone back to the beginning. Helen's changing her name to Helen O'Sullivan.
Tracy Malcolm.
Tracy Malcolm. I've been looking at her face most of the evening. She's been smiling in all the right places. I'm delighted to be giving her a prize. So we will send you your prizes, people. If you haven't won this time, please don't boo or try and trip people up as they're leaving the church hall. It's a raffle, and we were here just to do nice things. Be hexing people because they've won what you wanted to win. What were you going to say?
Just for fun.
Just for fun. Just for fun. There's no prize. Well, I was going to say it's just fun. There's no prizes, but we've just given away prizes. Oh, I forgot to put the slide up. Just for people who are still here, if you'd like to see the slide that accompanied that little adventure, there it is.
Some of your best work.
It is some of my best work. Our Wheel of Fortune. This might give you a feel for the tone of Neurocurious. I promise you the content is tip top. It's just that it's delivered with a side order of silliness.
Us.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about Neurocurious that they want me to clear up? I'm happy to take questions in the chat if anyone wants to clarify anything. You can also email me if you'll get an email tonight with the replay. No, you won't. You'll get an email you'll already have an email. It went out at 9:30 saying the cart's open, here's your link. But if you've got questions, feel free to message me, and we will help you with that. But if not, I hope that we will see some of you in Neurocurious. Pam, so fab to meet Heidi and to hear Kate. Usually she's so quiet when Tara is presenting.
Well, have you ever tried to get a word in when Tara's presenting?
I love that there is someone in the world that's harder to get a word in than I am around me. Like, I love that. I wouldn't have thought that was possible.
Amazing.
Sarah's coming. Come on, see you there, Sarah. Come on, Sarah. She'll be first over the line. Tomorrow, don't worry, we will send you a replay if you're signed up. If you got this link, you're signed up, so you'll get a replay. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Zoe. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Have a lovely night, or just go and have a night. You know, no expectation. We're not the boss of you. We hope that you enjoyed being with us tonight. We enjoyed being with you, and we always enjoy being with parents. So
nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. I'm going to stop recording now, and then afterwards I won't have to trim it with the bit at the end when we talk about how that went.
Yeah.
Stop recording now.
That's just another executive